everyone, Amethyst Ravensong here. I haven't done a book review in a while, which is a shame because I finished a book a while ago and should have done a review because it's from my favorite author. But before I do my book review, I kind of want to give a little background on my relationship as a reader with this author, and then talk about the book because there's a backstory here. So I'm obsessed with Anne Rice, and it actually has a lot to do with how I got into reading. I read a little bit in like grade school and was kind of into it, and then in junior high I literally wasn't. I wouldn't have called myself a reader. And I always tell people that if you're not a reader, it's just because you don't know what you like yet, and that was very true of me. So I have to tell the story of how I started reading, and then we'll talk about the latest book that I've read by Anne Rice. So my mom is a clean freak. She made us clean every Saturday. I mean, in deep clean, everything had to be cleaned. And so I was downstairs vacuuming one Saturday, and she came downstairs, so I vacuumed a little more vigorously. So it looked like I was cleaning, and I was cleaning, but I had to make sure I was cleaning really good for her. And she came downstairs, and she reached around me and turned off the vacuum, and playfully, not mean, like pushed me onto the couch and turned on the TV and changed the channel and said, "You have to watch this." And I thought my mom had been snatched by body-snatching aliens because she was telling me to watch a movie over cleaning. And just to prove she was still herself, she brought me some laundry to fold while I watched. And I watched, the opening credits, and it said Interview with a Vampire, based on the novel by Anne Rice. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with this film. And I was obsessed from the very beginning. So I came upstairs and asked my mom if I could walk to the library. It was a few blocks away. And she was like, "Yeah, are you gonna check out a book?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Wait, well, you're gonna have to take some mail and get you a library card." So I walked down and I got that, and I got the book, Interview with the Vampire. And I took it home and I read 2 chapters. And then we were going camping with one of my friends from Ballroom. And she and I were driving up there, and I was telling her about the movie and the book and how I'd already read the first 2 chapters. And she was really into it just based off me telling her about it. And so she was like, "Well, hand me the book and I'll read the first 2 chapters and then we'll read this together." So we got up there, we pitched our tent, had some time with my family. And when it was bedtime, she and I started reading back and forth to each other. I think we even started before bedtime, really. And we dove so far into this book that we read the whole thing overnight. We finished it as the sun was coming up. And we're kind of screwed for the rest of the day and really tired. And I saw that, hey, this is the first book in a whole series of books. And I was super stoked. And I have read all of the books in the Vampire Chronicles more than once. I call the first 3 the Holy Trinity. Interview with the Vampire, Lestat, and the Queen of the Damned. Queen of the Damned is still my favorite book to date. I've read those 3 13 times. Because I love them so much. And I don't know how much I've read the others. I haven't kept track. And then, for those of you who also like Anne Rice, her husband died. Stan, who was a great poet. And a lot of his poems are featured in her books, which I think is super cool. And she went really religious for a minute. And I was devastated. I thought I'd lost my favorite author to books about Jesus and angels and shit that does not interest me at all. And I thought it was done. And thought, well, I have the Vampire Chronicles, the Mayfair Witch series, and that's all I'm getting out of Anne Rice because I was not interested. I tried to read one of her books about some angel showing a serial killer, assassin, excuse me, the error of his ways. Yeah, it didn't go well. I didn't even finish like 3 chapters, I think. But she wanted, for a little time, she wanted her books pulled that weren't religious. To which her publishers laughed at her, I'm sure. Big money makers. But she came around and got over her way of grieving. We'll put it that way. And started writing Vampire Chronicles again. Which I was overjoyed. And, you know, snatched them up as soon as they came out. And so I was a little behind, though. I didn't realize that she'd put out another one. And she did. And so I read it. Her Prince Lestat and the Realms of Atlantis. This is what I'm doing my book review for. And amazing. Always is. I didn't expect anything less. My expectations are always more than well met in an Anne Rice novel, besides the religious stuff. No. But these are amazing. And I always love how she can go back and explain things better. And it's like, did you really have this all planned out all along? Because she's going back decades and picking up little details from books and from previous books and explaining them more. I love it. I love it. For those of you who have read The Queen of the Damned, you know, they talk about when the king and queen are drained of all their blood. Sorry, spoilers. If you haven't read them, you might want to stop right now. They turn into this like weird, clear, plasticky stuff before they disintegrate. She explains what that's all about in this. And it's awesome. It's so awesome. I love my Anne Rice. So, if you haven't read the Vampire Chronicles, I highly recommend them. I read them as a teenager with a dictionary besides me. Now we have the Google machine. But I seriously read every Anne Rice book with a dictionary because I swear to God she puts in a new big word every time for you to learn and uses it over and over again. And sometimes she'll throw in a few for you. So be prepared to, you know, Google some shit because you might have to. I have. And I am not ashamed to say, yep, I don't know what the hell that word is. And I look it up. Take the opportunities to learn. She gives you opportunities to learn. And some of her other books, I mean, I'm not going to review all of them because I've already read them and I'm trying to do these more fresh, but she gives you some different perspectives. Memnoch the Devil, I remember, I read that pretty close to my breakaway from Christianity. Too close. And she got into some subject matter that was even uncomfortable for me because I had been raised with this paradigm. But I loved it. I loved having a different perspective. And it was all for fiction purposes, but it was still really fun and thought-provoking. Getting ahead of myself here. But, you know, Realms of Atlantis, I mean, she figured out a way to tie in Atlantis, the legend of Atlantis, in with vampires. Like, I love it. I love it. And it didn't feel like it was far-reaching. It didn't. It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel far-fetched. It was great. It totally made sense. It worked. So I highly recommend her books. The Mayfair Witch series, which I'm rereading and do plan on doing book reviews on those because I'm starting in the beginning and whatever, is a little different. There's subject matter in there that's a little, at times. But the Vampire Chronicles is a little more safe because vampires, according to her myth, they can't have sex. But if Anne Rice can write about sex, it gets a little scary sometimes. Until you get over it. She's not afraid to get into some subject matter that's a little wah. But I highly recommend them. Read you some Anne Rice. Get to this one. I think it's like 14 or 15 in the series. You got lots of material, so go check it out. And I will have more book reviews coming down the line. Thanks, guys.